is here. When we come, one, we go all. No one can stop what is coming. Get here, guys. We need you in Minnesota. These people are terrorists.
We need to talk about the killing of Renee Good. If you're following the story, you've likely seen videos from multiple angles of the shooting that went down on January 7th, 2026. As an American citizen, I just feel so sick about all of this. Let's go back and try to figure out where we stand. So it's the 7th of January, 2026. Just one day earlier was the 5th anniversary of the MAGA party's failed insurrection attempt following Donald Trump's election loss in 2020. The day before was also the day the Department of Homeland Security announced what they called the largest immigration enforcement operation ever carried out. The operation's target, the metropolitan areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, also known as the Twin Cities. President Trump has been fixated on the state of Minnesota for months now, repeatedly criticizing its Democratic leaders and the large Somali American community there. The president had previously called Somali immigrants garbage, railed against a sprawling welfare fraud scandal, and ridiculed Governor Tim Walz, the Democrat who ran on the party's ticket in the 2024 presidential election against Trump. Walz, just 2 days before the shooting, had announced he was ending his bid for a third term as governor amid the ongoing fraud investigations into child care programs in his state. As I reflected on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, he said, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences. I won't mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington, in St. Paul, and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors, and ultimately they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in America to raise a family. They've already begun by taking our tax dollars that were meant to help families afford childcare, and they have no intention of stopping there. Lest we forget, it was only 6 months ago, on June 14th, 2025, that Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman was assassinated in a shooting at her home in Brooklyn Park. Hortman was the leader of the state's House Democratic Caucus and was killed alongside her husband Mark and their dog Gilbert. Earlier that same morning, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were shot and seriously injured in their home in nearby Champlin. Of the 2,000 federal agents who descend upon the Twin Cities on January 6th, some are Homeland Security's investigations officers, focused on suspected welfare fraud. Right before New Year's, a viral social media video by YouTuber Nick Shirley pushed the fraud story into the center of the national conversation, stoking a scandal that had already been brewing in state politics for years. That video was boosted by future trillionaire Elon Musk, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Attorney General Pam Bondi. In its wake, the Trump administration announced it was pausing federal funding to childcare in Minnesota, with Trump calling the state a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. St. Paul City Council member Molly Coleman described the first day under ICE occupation as unlike any other day we have experienced. Let's go back 25 years, to the passage of the USA Patriot Act. In case you're not old enough to remember, the Patriot Act passed just 6 weeks after the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. It expanded the federal government's ability to investigate, monitor, and prosecute terrorism both domestically and internationally, while weakening our Fourth Amendment protections and enabling the mass surveillance of American citizens. It was followed in 2002 by the Homeland Security Act, which created a union of federal authorities, consolidating 22 agencies including TSA, ICE, Customs and Border Protection, FEMA, and the Coast Guard under a single umbrella called the Department of Homeland Security. Many Americans at the time were more than willing to give up some of their freedoms in exchange for security in an increasingly terrifying world. This was the beginning of America's modern surveillance state, which no president since has attempted to reverse. We have been living with Big Brother ever since, because what else are we going to do? Vote third party? Former Governor of South Dakota Kristi Noem has been the head of DHS since her appointment by Donald Trump on January 25, 2025. During Trump's first year in office, ICE took the lead in carrying out his mass deportation initiative, which, to be fair to the rapist, was a central promise of Trump's election campaign. He has since significantly expanded the agency, its budget, and its mission. With the passage of his One Big Beautiful Bill, ICE's budget soared to an annual average of $37.5 billion. Detention Watch Network Executive Director Silky Shah said, "This bill skyrockets ICE's budget to never-before-seen funding levels and will make it the largest law enforcement agency in the country. ICE will now have 13 times its current fiscal budget for detention, which is already operating at a historic high, on top of the funding in ICE's annual budget that Congress sets each year." J.D. Vance justified the budget increase. "The thing that will bankrupt this country more than any other policy is flooding the country with illegal immigration and then giving those migrants generous benefits." Trump's administration has consistently scapegoated illegal immigrants and Democratic politicians as the source of the country's current economic problems. When the Trump administration first took control in January, the White House had demanded of ICE no fewer than 1,800 arrests per day. In May, dissatisfied with ICE's progress, they reorganized the agency's leadership and increased their quota to 3,000 arrests per day. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller confirmed this figure during an interview with Fox News host Sean Hannity. Under President Trump's leadership, he said, "We are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. And President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number higher each and every single day, so we can get all of the Biden illegals that were flooded into our country for 4 years out of our country." According to Broken Clock, the New York Post, that mandate has forced ICE agents to deprioritize going after dangerous criminals and targets with actual deportation orders. "All that matters is numbers, pure numbers. Quantity over quality," one ICE agent told the Post. In other words, ICE is increasingly being forced to go after softer and softer targets. So that is, on the surface, why several ICE agents are swarming the neighborhood of Portland Avenue South in Minneapolis, Minnesota on the morning of January 7th. But why is Renee Good there? Americans are divided about Trump's handling of the illegal immigration problem in the United States. A little more than half believe that some level of deportation is necessary. An October 2025 survey from the nonpartisan Pew Research Center suggested, according to the BBC. That's roughly the same number as Pew found the previous March, meaning the opinions of a lot of Americans hasn't changed too much on that subject. That same poll, though, also found that 53% of U.S. adults believed the administration was doing too much to deport undocumented immigrants. Only about 36% actually backed the approach, which, remember, includes detaining illegal immigrants at the South Florida detention facility, nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz. There are other detention centers scattered throughout the country, but Alligator Alcatraz quickly developed a reputation since its announcement in June of 2025. In December of last year, the report, "Torture and Enforced Disappearances in the Sunshine State, Human Rights Violations at Alligator Alcatraz and Chrome in Florida," published by Amnesty International, concluded that the camp's conditions, including routine and prolonged use of shackles and retention in a box described as a 2-by-2-foot cage-like structure, constitutes torture. So, yeah, some Americans have their feathers ruffled by the way this administration is treating undocumented immigrants who are, after all, human beings just like you and me, even if they are guilty of a misdemeanor. Countless American citizens have since taken up the call to monitor ICE agents to keep them held as accountable as masked, anonymous men can be held accountable. Many others have also taken up the call to warn their neighbors anytime an ICE operation unfolds in a neighborhood. This is why Renee Good is there on January 7th, not to get killed, not to become a martyr, not to abandon her child or widow her wife, not to make the national news, but simply to protect her neighbors from a force that she believes is tyrannical, undemocratic, and unjust. Whether you agree with her or not, that is why she is there, and that is why protesters and ICE observers throughout the country are doing what they are doing. We are not getting paid by George Soros. We stand up to injustice for free. So, it is 9:33 in the morning. Renee Good's car is parked diagonally across South Portland Avenue, blocking one of the 2 lanes of traffic on the one-way street. She is there with her wife and their Labrador retriever. She is wailing on the horn of her vehicle, eventually falling into a sort of musical rhythm where she briefly appears to swell with joy, because even though she is terrified of the situation in which she has found herself, she is bravely doing what she feels is the right thing to do. She and her wife, Becca, had recently moved to Canada following Donald Trump's electoral victory in 2024, a dream that many shared but few were able to realize. They eventually found their way back to the blue state of Minnesota. Like many of us, she didn't agree with ICE's mission, nor with the administration's treatment of people it depicted as criminals or animals or garbage. To Good, these people were human beings, just like her son. Her ex-husband, an unidentified man and father of her 12 and 15-year-old children, described her as a devoted Christian. In her teens, she went on a missionary trip to Northern Ireland. Her mother, Donna Granger, told the Minnesota Star-Tribune that Good was a compassionate woman who had taken care of people all her life. She was loving, forgiving, and affectionate. She was an amazing human being. The scene of the ICE operation is hectic. Armed agents, their faces concealed behind balaclavas and ski masks, are looking for people to arrest. They could be looking for dangerous criminals, but they could also be looking for people who have committed no crime other than the misdemeanor crime of having no papers. These people live, work, pay taxes, and raise children in the United States for years, for decades, because, after all, isn't America a land of opportunity, a land of hope, a shining city on a hill? Perhaps to them, America is an escape from some terrible situation you and I will never begin to understand. Renee Good, by the way, is not the only protester on the street that morning. In the 3 minutes leading up to the shooting, the honking of her horn is accompanied by the rhythmic marching beats of someone's drum, as if announcing imminent battle. One also hears the constant shrieks of whistles as concerned residents pour out onto the sidewalks and begin making as much noise as possible to alert their neighbors. "Wake up, everyone," the people are crying out. "The immigration police are here. You are in danger. Wake up." Kristi Noem would later allege that Good had been stalking and impeding ICE all day prior to the shooting. Several Minnesota state officials, including Attorney General Keith Ellison and Representative Ilhan Omar, said Good was acting as a legal observer of ICE's activities. Good's ex-husband said that Good had dropped off her son at school and was on her way home when they came upon a group of ICE agents, insisting that his wife was not an activist. By 9:35:51, Good's wife has exited the vehicle and is speaking with an ICE agent in the street. That agent is 10-year veteran of the agency, Jonathan Ross. Ross begins recording the interaction on his cell phone. Good assures him, smiling, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." As Ross circles her vehicle, getting a clear recording of her license plate, Good's wife can be heard telling him, "It's okay, we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later." Eventually, Ross makes his way back around to the front of Good's vehicle. As Becca further taunts him, "You want to come at us?" she says. "I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead." Jonathan Ross's father, Ed, described him to the Daily Mail as a committed, conservative Christian, a tremendous father, a tremendous husband. You would never find a nicer, kinder person. I couldn't be more proud of him. Jonathan Ross's wife is a U.S. citizen, but declined to say how long she has been in the U.S. The publication reported that Jonathan Ross and his wife have been married since August 2012. One neighbor described his wife as polite, very nice, very outgoing, while he is very reserved. They have a couple of kids. As early as 2020, Ross was a vocal supporter on social media of the white supremacist group known as the Proud Boys. He also, perhaps unsurprisingly, supported Trump during the 2024 election, and at one point had flown the Gadsden flag outside his home, according to neighbors. The Gadsden flag is a historical flag with a yellow field depicting a timber rattlesnake coiled and ready to strike. Beneath the rattlesnake are the words, "Don't tread on me." Originating in the American Revolution, the flag has in modern days become a symbol of American right libertarianism, and later, the Tea Party movement. In other words, Ross proudly flew a symbol of distrust and defiance against authorities and the government, which could be very well the definition of irony. But I always get that wrong. Correct me in the comments. At 9:36:58, a Ford Explorer enters Portland Avenue, and Good waves it along to allow the driver to pass. As Good is waving at the Explorer, a Nissan Titan stops to the left side of her SUV, effectively boxing her in between the two ICE vehicles. Two more agents step out to join Ross. As the agents surround Good's vehicle, they shout conflicting orders, according to one eyewitness. At this point, the ICE agent on the other side of the vehicle demands that Good get out of her car. He attempts to open the driver's side door and finds it locked. As the agent reaches through the window, presumably to unlock the door, Good reverses the vehicle a few feet, presumably to give herself enough room to maneuver around the agent who is now standing directly in front of and to the left of her vehicle. She immediately cuts the wheel to the right and moves forward in an effort to escape the situation. Her wife shouts, "Drive, baby, drive." The moment the car starts moving forward, Ross draws his pistol and fires 3 shots in rapid succession, one through the windshield, the second and third through the driver's side window. To my own eyes, it does appear that Ross was clipped in the left hip by the front left corner of the vehicle, the impact of which sent him back a couple of feet, which is no surprise since a vehicle with a dead driver is very difficult to control. The car then continues down the street until it crashes into a parked car and light pole. A male voice, likely Ross himself, can be heard saying, "F***ing bitch." Ross appears to move with a slight limp, nursing an injury to his left leg. He gives an order to call 911, and within a minute he is in his car and has left the scene. A bystander who witnessed the shooting identified himself as a physician. He attempted to administer medical aid to Good, but ICE agents refused to permit him near the crash, saying that first responders were en route. EMS and firefighters arrived at 9:43, 6 minutes after the shots were fired. They began administering CPR on her body. By 9:52, she was placed into an ambulance. Renee Good was pronounced dead at the Hennepin County Medical Center. This is another defining moment in America's history, and they just keep coming. One camp in this country insists that Renee Good was a radical leftist, a trained agitator, that she viciously attempted to use her automobile to harm or even kill an ICE officer. The people in this camp say things like, "Fuck around and find out," or "Obey orders and stop interfering with the authorities if you don't want to get shot, idiot." Another camp in this country highlights how Good was a genuinely good soul, undeserving of the fate she received. Some in this latter camp insist that Good's Honda did not make contact with the ICE agent at all. Separate analyses of the video footage by the Washington Post and the BBC News were inconclusive as of this writing, while an analysis by the New York Times concluded that the agent was not struck. Having seen many different angles, though, I personally believe that he was indeed struck, not that it changes my opinion about any of this. I also believe he committed murder in cold blood, though that would be up to a jury to determine, and whether or not Ross will ever face one is still very well up in the air. A quote from George Orwell's 1984 is being bandied about by people on both sides. "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." His heart sank as he thought of the enormous power arrayed against him, the ease with which any party intellectual would overthrow him in debate, the subtle arguments which he would not be able to understand, much less answer. And yet, he was in the right. They were wrong, and he was right. The day of the shooting, Trump posted on his private social media platform, Truth Social, "I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate." Vice President J.D. Vance agreed it was a tragedy, but said that it falls on this woman and all of the radicals who teach people that immigration is the one type of law that rioters are allowed to interfere with. "The gaslighting is off the charts and I'm having none of it. This guy was doing his job. She tried to stop him from doing his job. When he approached her car, she tried to hit him." Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that Good was engaged in domestic terrorism, and that she was intentionally trying to mow down ICE agents. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, had this to say at a press conference. "Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that they created themselves. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite." Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said he issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard for possible mobilization. He told reporters that he and others had been warning that the heightened ICE operations in the Twin Cities were a danger to public safety. Today, he said, that recklessness cost someone their life. He also pleaded for people to protest peacefully and not force a confrontation. "They want a show," he said of the Trump administration. "We can't give it to them. To Americans, I ask you this. Please stand with Minneapolis."
Really, you fucking punk? That's what you're gonna fucking do?
What?
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 What? Do you know what
Back
the fuck is that is for?
Back up.
What is that for?
Back up.
What is that for?
Back up.
What is that for?
Back up.
You're gonna push me? What is that for?
Back up.
What was that
I don't
for?
give a
You don't give a about
Back
her?
up.
Bro, this is why we're here.
Back up.
This is why we're here.
Back.
Shortly after the shooting of Renee Good, a GoFundMe page for the family was organized by Maddie Weiss and Becca Tilson. By Friday, the GoFundMe had acquired over $1.5 million for Good's wife and her 6-year-old son, far surpassing the original $50,000 goal. The page now states, "Thank you for your generosity. We've closed this GoFundMe and will place the funds in a trust for the family. If you're looking to donate, we encourage you to support others in need. We are truly grateful." Good's wife, Becca, posted on the GoFundMe page the following message. "Renee lived by an overarching belief. There is kindness in the world, and we need to do everything we can to find it where it resides and nurture it where it needs to grow. Renee was a Christian who knew that all religions teach the same essential truth. We are here to love each other, care for each other, and keep each other safe and whole. Like people have done across place and time, we moved to make a better life for ourselves. We chose Minnesota to make our home. Our whole extended road trip here, we held hands in the car while our son drew all over the windows to pass the time and the miles. What we found when we got here was a vibrant and welcoming community. We made friends and spread joy. And while any place we were together was home, there was a strong shared sense here in Minneapolis that we were looking out for each other. Here I had finally found peace and safe harbor. That has been taken from me forever. We were raising our son to believe that no matter where you came from or what you look like, all of us deserve compassion and kindness. Renee lived this belief every day. She is pure love. She is pure joy. She is pure sunshine. On Wednesday, January 7th, we stopped to support our neighbors. We had whistles. They had guns. Renee leaves behind 3 extraordinary children. The youngest is just 6 years old and already lost his father. I am now left to raise our son and to continue teaching him, as Renee believed, that there are people building a better world for him, that the people who did this had fear and anger in their hearts, and we need to show them a better way. Not to be outdone, a fascist sympathizer started a rival GoFundMe for Jonathan Ross, which, as of this writing, has raised nearly $300,000 with 6,400 donations. The profile picture of the GoFundMe organizer featured a Sieg Heil salute labeled paper, dominating a raised fist labeled rock. His profile picture has since been removed from the page as it nears its target of $550,000. I am one of those chronically online types who scroll through Reddit nonstop throughout the day, always looking for a reason to worry, always looking for either some glimmer of hope or a glimmer of despair for the future of this country, in which I, too, am raising a child. So I got the news pretty early when it broke. I stood in the kitchen with my wife, watching the video again and again with her on my phone. I remember thinking to myself, this has to be the moment. This has to be the pivot where either good or evil prevails for a time. Over the next couple of days, I hungrily devoured every video, every new angle, trying to understand where we stood as a country. A lot of voices online claim that the vehicle never touched him, but I don't think that even matters that much. A woman is now dead. A U.S. citizen executed by a paramilitary organization that is occupying a neighborhood without popular support or any measure of accountability. Renee Good and her wife stood toe-to-toe and unarmed against a powerful government that was treading on them. They were, and still are, patriots. History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes, or echoes. You've probably heard that expression before. The study of history allows us to see patterns, to analyze them, to make predictions, to make warnings. There was a famous moment in the lead-up to the Nazi Party's rise to power in Germany called the Reichstag fire. On Monday, February 27, 1933, precisely 4 weeks after Adolf Hitler was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany, a fire broke out at the Reichstag, which was Germany's parliamentary building. The Nazis attributed the fire to a group of communist agitators, including one they conveniently found inside the building. They used the arson as a pretext to claim that communists were plotting against the German government. This induced President Paul von Hindenburg to issue the Reichstag Fire Decree, suspending civil liberties and promising to pursue a ruthless confrontation with the communists. Realize who the communists were in this decree. They were the far-left political opposition to the Nazi Party, and the only real threat to the Nazis' power in Germany. Soon after Hitler became Chancellor on January 30th, 1933, he asked President von Hindenburg to dissolve the Reichstag. A general election was scheduled for March 5th. During that brief election campaign, the Nazis alleged that Germany was on the verge of a communist revolution, and that the only way to stop the communists was to put the Nazis securely into power. The fire happened just 1 week before the election, and the fire decree allowed the police, now controlled by Hitler's Nazi Party, to make mass arrests of communists, including all of the communist Reichstag delegates. In other words, sitting politicians. You can probably see where I'm going with this story. Like I said, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Hitler didn't come out of nowhere. He had been increasing his power and influence over Germany for over a decade by the time he passed the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act allowed the Chancellor, Hitler, to override the checks and balances in the German constitution. The Enabling Act was a pivotal step in the transition from the democratic Weimar Republic to the totalitarian dictatorship of Nazi Germany. The Democratic Party, which is the MAGA party's only opposition, has been painted as far-left radicals, as communists, for decades. Recall that it was only a few months ago, in September of 2025, Donald Trump signed a national security directive identifying anti-Christian and anti-American views as indicators of radical left violence. It was called National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, or Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence.
And all you liberal commie keep your hands to yourself, or you're gonna get hurt today, alright? We executed one of you yesterday. We executed one of you yesterday. You understand that?
And that is why people like me are checking the news every day. We are waiting for that moment, that Reichstag fire, that fire decree, that enabling act, not so we can turn to our Trump-voting friends and family and say, "See? I told you." No, it is with dread. Many students of history, myself included, truly believe that the United States is rapidly heading down a road toward a fascist dictatorship. We believe that it's not a matter of if any longer, but when. On X, the White House posted a compilation of clips showing ICE confrontations with American citizens, including one scene of an ICE agent firing a tear gas grenade point blank into a man's face. That specific incident occurred only a few days ago, on January 7th, the day after the shooting. It happened in Minneapolis. Stand with ICE, the post reads. Stand with law enforcement.
We see you following us, interfering with us, honking your horn, blocking our cars. You have a very high probability of making a really bad decision and being arrested today, okay?
I think I'm making exactly
I'm not.
the right decision.
Oh, then why are you giving her a warning?
I'm giving her a warning to not interfere with what we're doing, to not make a bad decision today and ruin your life.
Whoa, bad
Okay,
decisions.
thank
That's
you.
funny coming from you.
My friends, we draw a line in the sand, and we say, here, but no farther. And when that line is crossed, we draw another line, and we say, not one more inch. Then we draw another and another, until finally they have taken the whole beach, and we are drowning beneath the waves. I watched a longer video of a Minneapolis tear gas incident posted on the New York Post's YouTube page. The top dozens of comments are all pro-ICE, anti-protester. One commenter goes as far as to say, they should declare martial law. These agitators are insane. Another says, these people aren't doing this to protect our country. They hate and want to destroy it. 10,000 more ICE agents, please, and more if necessary, said the third. We need help in Minnesota. I have gone to protests in my city and neighboring cities. I have stood in a crowd surrounded by American citizens shouting, hey ho, Donald Trump has got to go. My protest sign is pretty clever, I think. It says, grab 'em by the democracy. When you vote, they let you do it. In reference, of course, to Trump's famous catchphrase. The administration wants to depict people like me as the enemy, as the radical left, because I oppose what it is attempting to do, what it is doing. In truth, I'm just an American, and I want my daughter to grow up in a democracy where justice applies equally to everyone, from the lowest in the land to the highest. My only prayer is that when, not if, when the pivot finally comes, that the people of the United States are able to overcome, and that we're able to bring ourselves to something greater. Renee Good did not wake up that morning looking to die or to harm anyone, let alone a fascist. She wanted to help her community, her country, and to get in a little good trouble, as civil rights icon John Lewis would have said. Get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and redeem the soul of America. He said this on March 1st, 2020, standing on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, to commemorate the tragic events of Bloody Sunday. Renee Good was an American hero even before her death. Whether you agree with her or not, whether you believe the killing was justified or not, she died protecting you. Even if you're a little slow on the uptake, I have a feeling you'll figure it out soon enough. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to support my channel's growth, please subscribe and like this video. And if you're doing well financially and profited from what I've said, consider buying me a coffee. Stay safe out there, everyone, and be good.